This is the new Overlords podcast, a chill video game podcast where we talk about all the games we care about at the moment, which this week includes Starfield versus No Man's Sky versus Star Citizen discussion head-to-head with only the coolest of takes. No hot takes here. So you'll hear all about that coming up. Plus some SWTOR talk, what we've been doing there. Cozy game news from SEMA. I'm really turning this into a SEMA thing. And more. I'm Jeff, a.k.a. Max the Gray, and with me is my co-host SEMA, my chocolate to my peanut butter, SEMA.
I'm going to take that in the chillest of ways. Hi, Max.
Hello there, SEMA.
Hi, Jeff, whoever you are.
Yes, that is me. Let's jump into some just a little bit of news before we get into our big debate, SEMA. Let's talk about the news.
Good news, everyone.
Actually, bad news. I guess I'm starting it off here. Not good news. I just wanted to bring this up, because it's a little different. Turns out that Unity, I follow video game development news. Unity is causing a big ruckus in the video game development industry right now because they are making some changes that'll take effect next year that is going to change the way things cost for developers. And what they want to do is make it so that not only do you have to pay them a licensing fee to use the engine if you're making, and this is the way it works today, over like $1 million or something like that, but if you have a significant number of installs as well, regardless of the revenue, they want to start charging you, but it's what seems like a nominal fee. So it's like 20 cents an install or 15 cents an install. And you can get that lower and lower depending on your arrangements with them, but they're going to start charging you. However, this is a problem. This is a problem. There's big backlash. They're trying to clarify. They're trying to make it easy. The problems are they're making this kind of retroactive. It's not going to count in the past in terms of, it's not retroactive in terms of how many games are installed out there today. So they're going to start counting January 1st. New games sold, new games installed, new revenue. But your agreement, your license with them, it does go into effect. If you developed this game 2 years ago and you happen to sell 1 million copies, or you happen to distribute 1 million copies in 2024, you will now owe them money, even though that wasn't the deal when you signed up and started using Unity. So that right. way, they're making it sort of retroactive, which
they're not grandfathering,
right? Which feels bad for one. For two, it's really going to be edge cases, but everybody's on the side of the little guy on the side of the developers. There are weird cases where you've got developers that don't make very much money on a game, but you distribute it very broadly. So if they're using,
I would think that would be a lot of indies do that.
Yeah. And in this lowest tier, Unity Personal and Unity Plus, where you're paying the least amount to Unity just for the license, to use the engine out of the gate, 200,000 installs is the install threshold, and then they're going to want to start counting after that, and asking you to pay per install after that. So that for some of these weird games that are kind of like free or free to play, and they paste a bunch of codes, or there's another story about almost like a charity developer develops this little game, distributes it broadly, they're going to be underwater, potentially. It's going to be very, very few edge cases, and it sounds like Unity wants to work with people, but it's causing a big kerfuffle. So this is also...
I mean, 200,000 seems like a pretty big number.
With the 200,000 was also if you're using the personal, sort of like the personal license and not the Unity professional license. The Unity professional license, it goes up to 1 million. It doesn't count until you're up over 1 million installs. So you picked a license in that case that said, I'm just sort of like learning. I'm just doing this, little thing for myself or on my side or for my friends. I just want to pay you a couple dollars to get the engine and get used to it.
And that person would have had to issued it 200,000 times before this affected them.
Right.
Yeah.
But still, It's changing the deal. A big problem with changing. I've altered the deal. Pray it die. Don't alter it any further. The big problem with altering the deal in this kind of case is you can't just say, okay, you guys got to do what you got to do to make money. I'll just switch from Unity to Unreal. You can't just do that. There is no
No.
just switching platforms to Godot or whatever other engine. When you make a decision, especially with any kind of sizable game, you've committed to the platform.
Right.
So
You're a captive audience.
Right. So that feels really bad. And there might even be games that are sort of in development right now and haven't released and made a commitment to Unity that are now feel like they're getting the rug pulled out from under them. Even potential AAA and big games that now their budget has suddenly changed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's rough.
Yeah.
That's rough. So that's that. What in more fun news, what do we got up in the cozy corner? Seema, our curator of cozy.
Oh my gosh. So I think what you're referring to is that Palia has had their next update out already, and they're still in open beta, and so they have this is a real content drop. So they have added things like Ember Castle or whatever it's called. So it's like a new thing to do in the game.
Yeah.
During open beta.
This is pretty interesting. They're kind of running it as a release. It's weird that they're continuing to say that they're in beta because they do not plan any sort of wipe between beta and release. They've already said that. So it's kind of live. It's kind of live service. And now they're adding more content. They sort of it's almost like a mini expansion. They're adding just another new area with a couple related quests to get into. These new little decos. Did you see the little pet it's not a pet. They I think they were very clear. The Kitsu are rare beings, not pets, whose presence must be respected. Okay. They are not used to human interaction and may run away when approached. But if you put this deco by your little house in your little stronghold, it'll come and check it out and come and visit.
I mean, I'm surprised, but also not surprised, right? Because their monetization model is all cash shop. So they need to be on a pretty good schedule of releasing new stuff to the cash shop.
Right. Yes. And they are releasing a couple things to the cash shop, but the bulk, which are, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of their little note, it's the outfits. The outfits is the only stuff that's in their cash shop right now. It's the only stuff you can buy. So all this other stuff where they've got new recipes, a couple new crops you can plant,
Right. But whenever they say bundle, I think they're referring to the cash shop. So up at the top, they said, and 4 new bundles.
Yes, outfit bundles. I thought they might have been talking about the Deco bundle as well, which is the Emberborn set. But they might not be referring to that as a bundle. Because the Emberborn, there is a new Emberborn decoration set where you plant things in your garden. I bet you have to plant some of the new crops to make this kind of stuff. And that's sort of the core end game loop. You're making all the decorations.
And to be clear, I'm not criticizing them for that.
No.
That's their chosen way to go. I approve. And the more they add to their cash shop, the more everybody benefits, really. More customization options, and they are able to stay in business, and you get to play the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they're doing a fine job with it. I know people, if there's any kind of cash shop, people freak out and say that you're evil. And they did that with Palia at the start. People were saying, how could you do this? There's no way to earn these outfits in the game. Well, then you are bad. Well, I don't think that's the case, and I don't think that's a fair way to put that on them, to say, unless they're free to play and you can just earn by playing the game everything possible in the cash shop, then unless that's how you run your game, it's not a valid monetization model, then games won't get made.
Yeah, but I mean, that's people. People are people.
Yes, people are people. Nobody hates games more than gamers, Seema.
Right, and it's just a certain percentage of gamers too.
Right. Yeah, it's the vocal minority. All right, what
See, this is
else?
us being chill.
Yes, very chill. No hot takes. I might, hopefully. I'm going to try to stick to that.
Speaking of cozies, now we're going to talk
Yes.
about Fae Farm, which
Yes.
they are actually in their real launch.
They have
And
launched, correct.
yeah,
Yeah.
they had a huge display when you were at PAX West.
So if
But you
you,
did you
so
get a
tell
chance
us
to
about
play it?
this.
Okay.
I have not, no, I did not play it when I was there. Oops, mute. I'll play the little video though while we're talking.
I'm comparing it in my mind to Palia because they're just both happening right now, and they both are farming sims. This one has some adventure to it though, and also it's not an MMO. It's just like a co-op. You can play with up to 3 of your friends, so 4 max together. Not exactly sure what that means though. I
Right.
think it means they do have adventures in this game, so I think it means you can go on adventures together, but I don't think it means anything like you have this you co-own a farm and you both work the farm or anything like that. You probably just do that yourself. I mean, stuff is all known, just not by me.
I don't know. In the video, it looks like multiple people work in the farm. Maybe you do. Maybe
Oh,
you do share and you
interesting.
all sort of work the farm.
See, I just think that would give rise to
Yes. And this is the problem.
expectation gaps.
Who's the boss of the farm?
Right, and who's doing all the I've been doing all the work and you just log in for the adventures.
Right. Yeah. I've
Um,
been farming. I've been cutting down trees all day.
you
You
got as
just,
many rubies as I did.
I get to pick where to put the tulips. Yeah.
It is very cute.
Right.
I
And there is a
think
townspeople aspect to it. And I think there's like relationships with the townspeople. I think it's very kind of Stardew Valley-ish as well.
I
But
think it has more of a mobile game look to it than Palia does. Palia seems more like I don't yeah, because the characters are more simple, so I can see them on a smaller screen and
yeah, yeah, it is a little bit lower poly. It is a little bit less, certainly less detailed, even with the decorations and everything, but cute and well formed. I mean, it's good. It's good art.
yeah,
It is
and
getting, and you mentioned this. It is getting a ton of both press
marketing.
and their advertising budget must be
Yeah,
off the
like
roof, right?
yeah, I see Palia. I mean not Palia. Fae Farm ads all over the place in my travels on YouTube,
Yeah, it
and it's
is.
the voiceover is this woman with a sort of girlish kind of voice saying, I found the perfect place to relax and earn friendships and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, that's kind of turning me off actually.
Yeah, yeah, it's
I do want to relax. It's not that. I
yeah.
do like it. But
So chat room
yeah.
is asking Fae Farm. Says this is Fae Farm.
Yeah, Fae
Um,
Farm.
so if you saw in the video when I was showing you PAX West, this is one of the biggest. It was one of the biggest area, sort of the biggest games at PAX West in terms of square footage on the show floor. Plus, they had a big banner, Fae Farm. Yeah. Did you say? Oh, Fae Farm. Yeah. They had a big banner up. All of the lanyards. They paid for all the lanyards because all the lanyards where you hang your badge off of it say Fae Farm on them. So Seema said she was seeing it, and this is sort of why we pulled it in, seeing it all over YouTube. So, yeah, they are spending some advertising bucks on
I
it.
will
So,
say though, in general, I'm kind of happy about this sort of cozy game movement kind of a thing because I think for the longest time every game was just combat.
yeah,
And so I think there's place for both. There's room for both.
and I
Because
think,
more people are playing games than ever did before, which means people that find different things fun.
you should be in charge of our cozy game update moving forward.
Okay.
Slightly less cozy, but as our chat room was talking about in the pre-show, still kind of cozy in its own way. Starfield. I just pulled up one Starfield headline that I thought was, and barely even a headline, but I liked what people were doing here. So there's a couple, Game Rant posted a couple articles. There's a lot you can make in Starfield. You can make your characters look like other people, and that's the couple things that I pulled up. You can make your ships look like other ships. You can build the Millennium Falcon. There's a lot of that going on, but these two were really good, and it was somebody made a Chris Hadfield in game. Let me show it up there on the screen. That was really good, and perfect person, poster child for the kind of aesthetic that Starfield is really trying to achieve.
I agree.
I bet Chris Hadfield himself really likes it because he's talked about playing games before. I bet he likes this game. And then there was another one that was Ripley from Aliens. So it's the Sigourney Weaver character. Somebody made them. And when people make these, often they'll post, here's the sliders, here's the things you pick in the character creator to make your character if you want to make a character that looks like this. And I've seen like Keanu Reeves. And I thought I should show off. Let me pull it up here. I made. It's me, Maxio. I mean, turn my face.
I think that is, yeah.
How's that? How's that looking? Looking close?
It's pretty close.
I think it is.
You need a little sprig of hair going straight up, though.
Yeah, you can't like adjust the length anymore with that with any finer detail. Is either that or like really spiky, big, almost like a much longer than my hair, so it didn't look right. So this would be me if I had sort of more of a military buzz cut for the Constellation group that I'm now a part of.
That's right.
Fits better when I'm wearing a space helmet too. You know what I mean? Yeah, I kind of like it. And
I don't know what you mean.
I tweaked it. There's actually a place you can go in game that's sort of like a barbershop. I forgot what it's called. Enhance. So it's set up as a storefront. It's like a cosmetic organization. You walk in and they sort of pitch you. They're like, come to Enhance. We'll fix you up. Blah blah blah. And basically, just once you say okay, it just shoves you back in the character creator. So the first time I created the character, I didn't like it as much. I went to Enhance. I tweaked things and I got much closer. So I sort of like where it's at, to the point where in certain times I usually play in first person view. So you don't really see your character that much, but anytime you get up out of your pilot seat, your character, it goes to third person view, shows you getting out of the pilot seat and you turn toward the camera and walk past. And I'll glimpse it out of the corner of my eye. And I do get a little bit of like looking in the mirror kind of.
Yeah,
it's like from certain angles
like
and stuff.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty cool. So yeah, having a bunch of fun with that. Show me your characters. I'm interested to see everybody's characters. I've seen a bunch of people posting on Twitter. Jump in our Discord or at me on one of the social networks. I want to see your characters, either that look like you, and I try to make all my characters look like me, or characters that you're making that look like other things. And then in future weeks, we'll get to the ships, because I'm just starting to get into shipbuilding, and that is going to be a thing.
Yeah, I've seen some amazing ships.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. All right, this podcast is brought to you by you, and by you, we mean all of you listening right now and watching and everybody in the chat room. All of you are what makes this fun for us. We could really use your help getting the word out about the new show, our new show plus phase of the podcast of where we're at today. So if there's anyone you think that might be in the market for a chill games podcast, let them know. All your subscribes and all the places and reviews and places like iTunes really help out too. Just to get it out there and sort of catch up to where we were when we were just a one game podcast. Because we've lost a couple of those one game people, and now we've got to sort of slowly grow back into a multi-game audience, which I think is going to be fun. Special mention and thank you, of course, to the chat room who are here live on Twitch while we record. We're switching up the times a little bit. This week we're on a Wednesday afternoon, and it feels really good to me. We'll see how it works out. We'll try to settle on a time, but especially as we bring on guests, that may shift up. Hello, chat room. Thanks a bunch for helping us get started early in the show. You can find out how to join the chat room live and see us record this live by following me, Max the Gray, on all of the social networks, all 4 of the main ones at least. but sometimes also on Instagram and Facebook. So that's Mastodon and Blue Sky and Threads and X. But especially in our Discord, newoverlords.com/Discord. So again, thanks everybody. This has been really fun. And with that, another quick shout out. I didn't scroll down enough. This podcast is also brought to you by, which we always like to talk about, Alea Iacta Est. And that's the gaming community that Seema and I are a part of. You can find that stuff at aie-guild.org. Broad gaming community playing all the games, which is really fun and makes this podcast really fun because it's all of the games.
It's like a huge group of friends all playing games.
Yes, and it is huge. We've got hundreds of people in there these days. SWTOR, Final Fantasy, WoW, ESO, Guild Wars, Diablo, Coreborn, Palia, all of those. We've got sort of subgroups and all of those. And then people spin up servers like Valheim and V-Rising, and it's, you can come and go in some of those things too. So check that out at aie-guild.org. And now, only cold takes, but what we've been playing.
It looks like meat's back on our menu, boy. No way. God, finally. I kind of like the magic bread.
All right, Seema. I've been seeing too much. And in fact, I almost wasn't going to do this because I've almost been seeing too much. But I thought a chill take, a cold take on this debate about Starfield versus other games, I think is warranted. And I think it's kind of a fun thing to talk about. And I like the perspective that there are lots of really good games to play, and it's okay to like more than one game. So I'm going to go through it, and you challenge me as much as you feel histrionically or not, or chilly. And we'll see where this... I will
hotly contest you.
We'll see where it sort of goes. I think it is a really fun conversation because I love all three of these games. So we're going to talk about Starfield, a lot of what I've been doing in Starfield, but then also compare it to, and I'll explain for people that aren't familiar with No Man's Sky, what it is, who might like it, and Star Citizen, and what it is and what it is not, and who might like it. And I like all of these for different reasons. So to kick it off, can they be compared? Yes, I think they can be compared. Can you compare chess to Starfield? Yeah, you can compare chess to Starfield. Are they similar games? Barely. And that's what we're going to get into. So we've heard a lot about Starfield so far. Let's talk about a couple of the other games and describe what they are as well. And then we'll bring it back to what I've been doing in detail in Starfield and sort of how it compares to them as well. So Star Citizen, that's probably one that we haven't talked about very much on the show, but I think is an interesting one. And I have played quite a bit on, and I continue to come back to, and I expect to play more in the future.
Yeah, it already has a long history.
Yes, it does. It has a 10-year history, a $700 million history so far. Is Star Citizen a game? No. Star Citizen is not a game. Star Citizen is not yet a game. So technically, it is an alpha. They're trying to make it into a game. They're early in development. So it's in an interesting state. Can you play it? Yes, you definitely can, and you can get your money's worth. So there are a couple ways to play it. You can play, and they've got multiple times a year, what they call free fly weeks or free fly weekends. And they do this at various times where you can, for free, install the game. They give you a starting ship, and you can just get in there and you can start playing. How do you play the rest of the time? Well, you have to buy in. And you don't buy the game. You don't buy a game box. You have to buy a ship. And you can spend as little as like $40, if it's I think it's on sale, you can get it for like $35-$40 for a starter package with a starter ship. And that could be plenty. And that could be all you need to play now and play in the future or ever pay or any money again. Where people get confused and where you've heard the sort of potentially horror stories in the past is people paying thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, and people have, and people do. Mm-hmm. And what you're doing there in those cases, and here I'll show the store, you're buying bigger and bigger ships potentially. You're buying more ships. You're buying potentially, and this is where people say, oh, Star Citizen's a scam. You're potentially buying ships that they haven't even developed yet. They've shown some artwork of it. They've shown maybe an early design of the ship. And I'll scroll down here in a second. There's a ship on the store right now for $1,000. Some of the ships, when they announce them, they might not be ready for a year. And so you might pay $1,000 from some big battle cruiser that you want to fly around because it looks really, really cool, and it doesn't exist. So people say you're paying $1,000 for pixels that you can't even get into in the game. That is true in that case. Now, have they made good on most of their promises of developing or implementing these ships that people buy? Mostly. I think there are a couple of the original very expensive ships that they still haven't gotten around to implementing, and it's been years. So that doesn't feel good. They do let you take any ship that you've bought, whether it exists or not, and do what they call melting it down. And that means you can basically turn it back to credit for the store and buy something else with it. Can't get your money back.
Is it a 1-to-1?
It's a 1-to-1 for dollars that you spent.
Okay.
And so if you bought a ship on sale, and they had a ship sale and you bought it for 20% off, well, you're only getting what you actually paid back in credit. So you have to sort of be careful. Like if you say you bought this Mustang, this is a fake commercial that they created, which is actually pretty hilarious. It's like a Tony Stark describing the ship, and we put engineering and intuition into our ships and blah blah blah. You should look it up. But if you say you buy the Mustang for $60 because it was on sale, it's an $80 ship, and then you melt it down, and then you buy something else, then you want to go back and buy the Mustang again. Well, it costs $80 retail. You don't get to get it back. You gotta be careful if you bought it on sale. Is all I'm saying. But still, so chat room, Forster said there in the chat room, it's a tech demo. That's really what you're sort of buying into in Star Citizen, and something I really like.
It's also a community, though. I mean,
yep.
I feel like when people talk about this, I feel like every hobby can be very expensive. And
Yep.
I met a guy who's really into Star Citizen, and it's clearly where he spends his time, his off hours, when he's not working and everything. It's his hobby. And I mean, if photography is your hobby, it can cost thousands of dollars easily.
Yep.
And
golf.
even things that golf, yeah, even things that you think shouldn't cost a lot, like, I don't know, painting miniatures or something. It can cost a lot.
Anything.
And if it's rewarding to the people doing it, I'm all for it. The whole thing about not being able to make ships, I mean, then that would keep me from buying them until they're out, but
yes,
maybe not someone else, because they do have this dual motivation, right? One is to support Star Citizen,
yes.
and one is to get a crazy cool ship.
Yes.
And one is to have, that you can show to members of your community. And there's guilds, I think, like at least there's for,
yes.
Yeah.
So what do you do in Star Citizen? And this is where we'll sort of get into the comparisons. Star Citizen is also very simulator. It's a simulator sandbox with emergent gameplay. There are a couple game loops, but it's very simulator based. And this is why it's taken them 10 years to get to what I would say is maybe half done. That's my estimate. I think everyone is vastly underestimating what it would take to actually turn this into a game. Because what you think is the final 20% of the game is typically what takes 80% of the remaining time. There's no, like, there are NPCs around, but they don't really do anything. There's a little bit of NPC fighting. So there's a ground combat so these bunkers, and you go and shoot, and the AI is okay. There's not really a story to it yet. They're sort of building those things in, but it's very simulator based. So the tech is brilliant. It's the best of any game, sort of this kind of game, especially a space game, flying game. It's the best tech out there in the market. If you want to experience it, that's a fun thing to do, just to go in and experience it. So this is a thing that we'll compare to Star Citizen. The idea that,
and I'm assuming every type of ship, the simulation is different.
Yes,
to some extent.
The physics of the ships are all actualized and realized. And I'll go to some other bits of video here of me playing and going places. I think I was about to fly and like land on the ground. Every single part of the ship, and this is their objective, is that everything that the ship does, everything that you're doing in the game is physical and real and implemented with all of its physics associated with it. So if you have a gun on a ship, you attach that gun to that ship and you can walk outside of your ship and you can see that gun. And if you get shot in that area of the ship while you're out in combat, well, you will see damage to your ship on that side and it might knock that gun off of your ship. And then how do you fix it? Well, you could see I'm actually in this video right here. I found a gun off a crashed ship in this site. I picked it up with my tractor beam and I'm dragging it over to my ship and I'm going to take it and put it in the back of my ship. All 100% physical, realized objects in the game. They're working very hard to make all of this fully persistent. It wasn't in the past. If you logged off, things would sort of disappear. You couldn't leave a crashed ship on the ground and come back and find it later. You can kind of do that now. The servers are still sharded. They're not fully meshed together. So that makes it kind of difficult, but that does happen. And that's where I found these crashed parts. Guns. Guns are fully physical and realized. If you want to attach a scope to your gun, you open your character, you look at the gun, you grab the scope out of the inventory and you drag it over to the gun and you wiggle it around until it attaches onto the top of the gun. This tractor beam that I have an attachment inside it that turns into a tractor beam. I can take that attachment out and swap it out for like a med ray attachment. But I do that by dragging it, clicking on it and dragging it out of that gun. Very physical. If there's damage on your ship, you see where you got shot. You see which parts of your ship are damaged. If an engine gets knocked out, well, that engine is knocked out then, and your ship may be unbalanced, and it may, if you have no adjustment, no extra thrust, you might just spin in space. All of that, and then the whole thing about flying from space onto the planet, that's fully physical and fully realized. You can fly up and down, take off and land. There are no cutscenes. There are no cutscenes anywhere, which is good and bad. So we'll get to some of those comparisons. But it's very simulation. Is there a story? Is it fun? You gotta find your fun. And if you're in it for the simulation, and when I commit myself to the simulation, it is very cool. If you're in it because you want to just sort of like run a cool, quick mission and go fight some pirates, it might take you 20 minutes to go find your ship, go get in your ship, make sure it's powered up, go get it repaired, fly over to a place, pick up a mission, find the pirates, track them down, and now you finally found some pirates, and now you can fight them. And if you get blown up, well, now you're back to square one. So commit to the simulation, and you can have a ton of fun in Star Citizen and seeing the tech. Okay, so that's Star Citizen. Let's go to, and I've talked quite a bit, so we'll just do it a little quicker for No Man's Sky, because that's sort of like the other one that it's fun to talk about and compare. So No Man's Sky, what is No Man's Sky? No Man's Sky is less sort of like that simulator, flight simulator. It's less a focus on that as it is a tech demo of an infinite procedurally generated exploration universe. And that's really the fun, I think, where you find the fun in No Man's Sky. So No Man's Sky came out 7 years ago, and the tech that they built that was really sort of innovative at the time was this ability to, through seeds and basically parameters for what makes up a planet and the wildlife on the planet and the ships you might encounter, the spaceships you might encounter, a set of parameters for all of what makes that up, and then the procedural generation code that creates that when you discover that planet. And then it's set, and anyone else can then go to the planet you discovered as well. But they took that to the nth degree. They said, here's a unsigned 64-bit integer, 4 billion or 4 trillion or whatever that we can scale this up to. That's now how many planets there are. So you can really get the feel of exploration in this sort of nearly infinite set of 256 galaxies go to any of those galaxies and have billions of star systems and then billions of planets within those star systems that you can go and explore, because it's just a bunch of parameters that sort of create that on the fly. Where is the sort of the boundaries to Star Citizen? They've added a ton in the past few years, but because it's procedurally generated, you can get the feel of, well, what are the parameters? There's tall grass, short grass, medium grass, and it can come in basically any color of the color palette. There's fat creatures, short creatures. You sort of, over time, relatively quickly start to see, okay, this is what they mean. This is sort of where the boundaries of these procedures are. And I could still find really interesting, cool, and they add new bits and sort of aspects to the procedures over time. I can find new things all the time, but you're still within the aesthetic and the art, and you sort of know what to expect each new thing you see. So you can get used to it pretty quick. They also, though, have... Go ahead.
Well, I mean, are you really exploring something if it's procedurally generated? Aren't you just running around in a random space? I mean, if that's a weird question, but it's sort of like I feel like when you're exploring, you're looking to see what somebody has put there for me to find.
Well, there's a little bit of that. If you create a base, and there's a base building in this game, which is actually quite good, and I'm thinking about in terms of Star Citizen Outpost or Starfield Outpost. There's no building in Star Citizen, but you can create outposts, and you can, once your outpost is slightly big enough, and it doesn't, within 2 minutes you could build your outpost big enough, you can put it up on the server, and you can then see anyone else's outpost, and you can visit those outposts. So that's one thing. The second thing is the creatures on the planets. You can take those creatures and turn them into pets, and you can have them as your pets. So you could be a person who wants to go out there and discover new creatures and find new creatures. You might
The
also
creatures themselves are created by...
They're procedurally generated. So you might you're going to find a creature that no one else has found. And maybe it's sort of like a flying butterfly thing, and you can ride it, and you can fly around on your flying butterfly thing that's pink and purple and blue, and no one has ever seen that before. And
you
there's,
can say, look what I found.
Yeah. And there's big websites called NMS, No Man's Sky Exchange, where people show the unique ships they've found, the unique creatures they've found, the unique planets that they've seen. Because then maybe you want to set up your base on the perfect paradise planet. This is my planet that I'm sort of showing on the video here that I found, which has really good weather. So it's never bad weather on my planet. Even when it's a storm, it's called Jade Winds, and it just lightly blows this magical wind. And so it's never bad. It never storms.
And so was that luck that you found a planet with good weather? Okay.
And I was the first person to ever find this solar system, so I got to name it. And I was the first person to ever find this planet, so I get to name it. And I own my base on it. Other people could come here and build bases now that if they also find it.
Could they find it without you inviting them? Or?
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. You can just fly around.
So now it exists.
Yes.
Not just for you.
Yes. And it always existed on the map, but...
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
It always existed on the map.
It's not generated because you came into...
No, the seed is always there. And it's always there, but they're not like saving anything about it until like you put a base down on it.
Gotcha.
So it's that. They've added ground craft. So here I'm zipping around in my little floater, and there's like 5 different kinds. I've got like a big hauler version. I've got like a exoskeleton mech version. I can stomp around and pick up resources off the ground. It's also lightweight survival. So there's different ways to play where you start with almost nothing. You're picking up rocks off the ground, and you're using those rocks and minerals and different elements to then create the things you need to eventually do all of these things, build an exocraft and build a base and get off the planet and fly around and fly to other planets. Over time, they've added a little bit of story, but it's very, very light. So there's 3 sort of races, and you sort of discover the history of those races. They don't really have much personality. They'll kind of talk to you in the game, but not really. There's a little bit of a story. People like to, in a fun way, the community sort of like speculates on what does it really mean. And Hello Games is adding more and more sort of revelation to what this all means in a fun way over 7 years. But it's still, it's not really, it's not an RPG. There's not a narrative story very much. It's more about this survival, lightweight survival, discovery, base building, finding new and cool ships, sharing those with the community, and then their expeditions.
Right. I was just going to say, and doing expeditions.
So they just released their 11th expedition, and the expeditions are sort of challenge mode. You start a brand new character, and we talked all about it last week, so go back to that show. In fact, I showed what the expedition looks like, and Corley and I talked about it. There's sort of like 5 phases of the expedition and 8 objectives within each of those phases, and it sort of accelerates your path to getting the stuff you need to go and explore. The current expedition is one of the most challenging because it really forces the idea of the exploration. They're doing things like, okay, go find a creature, but go find a creature whose blood temperature is over 60 degrees Celsius. So you have to go find really hot, maybe it's hot planets covered in lava, and then you have to like scan each of the creatures on there. And I've scanned like 8 lava. The ground is literally on fire. I'm scanning all of the creatures and none of them are hot enough. So a lot of people are complaining about this expedition because it's so hard and random to try to find these creatures in these places that it's asking you to find. But
And just to clarify, by hard, you mean a lot of time.
Yes. A lot of time unless you cheat. And by cheat, I mean the community can get together and say, hey, I found a planet with this hot creature. Here are the coordinates. Go find a portal. And there's sort of like a little discovery process for you to go and track these down and find a portal. And go find a portal, enter these coordinates, and go to this planet, and you'll be able to scan the creature. So right now, I'm sure the community has solved all of it. And if I get frustrated enough, I'll just look up the coordinates and finish the expedition.
I would.
But the fun of it, it's very chill. You're talking about sort of like chill, cozy games. I've been playing this the last couple mornings, maybe like a half hour, 45 minutes, where I'll just wake up either on the Steam Deck or on my PC, grab a cup of coffee. I'll like go to 3, 4, 5 new solar systems. And I'm to the point now, I'm far enough past where everyone else started for the expedition that I'm into new solar systems that no one has ever discovered before. Scan a couple planets, look for some creatures, see if I can find what I need to find. I'm down to like the last 5 things I need to find out of the 40. So, chill, relaxed. It only lasts 2 months though for the expedition, and then you're sort of done. There's lightweight space combat. I'd say it's lightweight. It's nothing like Star Citizen. It's not even as in-depth as Starfield, but there's space combat. There's very lightweight ground combat. There's sort of like pirates that'll spawn in.
NPCs.
And they just added a new like pirate dreadnought battle. There is technically PvP, but it almost never happens. You have to turn on, opt in, make sure you've set your game to multiplayer because it's nearly a single player game. Everything is saved locally. And in fact, as such, you can cheat. You can open up a save editor, and people have this. And there's almost one that's kind of approved, and they talk about it in the official Discord, and it's okay. You can give yourself infinite money. You can give yourself any ship that you want. There's save editors. And as such, nobody really cares that much about PvP, and it's kind of hard to make it happen. But there is PvP. You could see somebody on the ground, and if you have PvP turned on and you come across another player, again, which is very rare because there's a trillion planets, you could shoot them, and they could shoot you back. If you find them in space, you could have a dogfight. And people do this, they'll set it up where they'll do that, but it's very, very rare.
You'd almost have to set it up. Otherwise, it'd just be too random.
Yes. But yeah, so that's No Man's Sky. And, I know this is sort of like at the high level what these are. And then let's sort of compare and contrast to Starfield. And what have I been doing at Starfield? And where is Starfield? So Starfield, what is Starfield? Starfield is an RPG. And I want to take a pause there because RPG has gotten a little bit of a twist, especially in this age of Baldur's Gate 3. on what people count as an RPG role-playing game and what people don't. So I would say Starfield is an action first-person RPG where you've got a character and you've got attributes and skills and you're progressing those skills and you're building things in the game and
you're progressing.
And you've got like factions and people you talk to and a story to go through. It's not a narrative RPG, which is what Baldur's Gate is. And that's what people are sort of really excited about at the moment around Baldur's Gate, where it's the choose your own adventure for the narrative. There's much less of the infinite narrative choices of the main storyline in Starfield. And I think that's okay. I think that's okay because if you want to jump into Starfield and ignore the narrative, fine, do it. You kind of can't do that in Baldur's Gate. You cannot ignore the narrative. There is no game without the narrative in Baldur's Gate. Can you just like wander? It's not open world. You cannot just wander around in Baldur's Gate and like find more goblins to go kill. No, if you kill the goblin camp is dead. If you want to get to the next zone, well, you got to talk to some people. So could you just play your sort of like sandboxy RPG in Starfield and never do the main story quest or do the narrative stuff? Yeah, you can. It's pretty interesting in that way. Is it as sandboxy and as something like Star Citizen, where only things happen because, sort of you made them happen with other players? No, it's got factions and elements there, and your skills are advanced by following some of the story and that kind of thing. But there's a lot of sandbox to deal with. What I'm doing here in the game right now is building my outpost. But outposts are not part of the story. There's no part of the story that says, okay, well, you better go build your outpost. I'm building my outpost, and I've spent, I'd say, 50% of my game time playing Starfield so far, building my outpost. Our outpost building as good as, say, No Man's Sky? So here's where we get into the comparison. I would say No Man's Sky, you can get a little more creativity because there's more base parts to snap together. And even the mining and manufacturing that you do in Starfield is a little bit more advanced in some ways because you can... They've put some boundaries around it for certain reasons in Starfield not unbalance the game. In No Man's Sky, they don't care about balance. If you want to set up, and if you saw what I was showing there in No Man's Sky, I had like a dozen miners filling a stack, and I think I literally have something there, like 50 containers, and they're very, very big containers, mining materials. I maxed out my credits in No Man's Sky after I built that mining setup, which took me hours and hours to build, but I gave myself 4 billion credits. That's the most you can have on your account because I mined all that stuff up and I basically broke the game. I got 4 billion credits. You can do whatever you want. You can't do that in Starfield.
So in other Bethesda games, could you build anything?
In
like
the later
Skyrim.
Fallout games, you can. Fallout 76 in particular, there's base building and there's crafting.
Okay.
So yes. So people have compared this to sort of Fallout 76 and what you can do there. And people liked, there was almost a little bit more flexibility in Fallout 76 as well. You could sort of like scrap things together and be a little more creative than you can go here. You don't want to unbalance a game though. And the boundaries and limits that they've put on it in the base game in Starfield do feel somewhat limiting. I can't play the outpost mining manufacturing mogul where I'm going to get all of the credits possible and be a billionaire. I can't do that in Starfield because they've said, well, you can mine as much as you want, but the containers are really small, so you'll be making 50 million trips back and forth to the starport. The vendors that you sell to run out of credits right away, and you got to like wait 24 hours, 48 hours in game for them to restock. And the things that the sell price is really, really low. So sure, you can go. It's going to take you like a literal years of playtime to get to 1 billion credits, but you could do it. You can't break the game in that way to keep it balanced. to keep it balanced with going and fighting, going and doing missions and using the bounty
That's what you
board.
mean by balance.
Yes,
Right.
balanced
They
against
want
the
you to
other
do all
gameplay loops.
the other activities.
Yeah. Now, the modding community will break it, and then you'll be able to do whatever you want and play it however you want. So, once there are already 700 mods available for the game, and as that developer kit for the mods expands in 2024, and that's early 2024 is when they're going to release the full development kit, you'll be able to do anything and everything. And I'm sure there will be like full modded game support. And I did not mean to turn it. Why is the sound on? Oops. Stop. That is too loud. I'm shooting a pirate in the face. I guess I did not shut the sound off on that one, so we will skip that one.
You're no longer in real life. You're inside the game. You're trapped.
Yes. So I'm sure all of that will become possible once you break the game. But to keep the base game balanced, I see where they put some of these boundaries on it. But I think that's fine. So there's base building, there's ship building, there's relatively deep narrative, main story, and tons of side story. And this is very Bethesda. And that's where another place that Starfield differentiates itself. The main story and the side stories, you want to go join the Vanguard, which is sort of like the military frontline police out in the galaxy, and build up in their ranks and run some of their missions, you can do that. You want to join the Frontier group, which is sort of like old, sort of like Firefly, Western. They were the other side of the Civil War. If you remember, we talked about the lore a little bit of where in the timeline are we at with Starfield. There was a civil war between the United Colonies and the Frontier. Both of those factions still exist. There's peace between them right now, but they're not all that friendly. In fact, you'll encounter a couple situations where maybe they're forced to work together and maybe it comes out okay and we make some friends along the way. Yada, yada, yada. Some good ways. Do you want to become a stealth infiltrator of the pirate? In fact, if you pick up contraband, there's drugs. You say you shoot a pirate ship, and you shoot out its engines, and you board the ship, and you take the ship. And I did. The ship that I fly around today, the big blue one that you saw in the other video, is a pirate ship that I captured. All the pirates will typically leave contraband laying around on their ships. And if you don't clean out that contraband and you go into United Colony space, you get scanned by the space cops when you come into United Colony space. And if you have like contraband harvested human organs, which is a thing, they'll throw you in jail. And if you want to get out of jail, maybe you pay a fine, or maybe you agree to go undercover and infiltrate a pirate organization. And then there's a whole long quest line that goes off and does that. So that's the Bethesda thing, is there's all of these sort of quest lines. There's also, so that doesn't exist really in either of those other two games. So there's a compare and contrast. The whole narrative, it's not as much choose your own adventure narrative as Baldur's Gate, but that is a strength and it's really, really fun. And I'm having a lot of fun with it. Ship building, base building. You could compare the base building a little bit as we did to No Man's Sky. The ships, definitely more variation in the ships than either of the other games. But the ships are more real and actualized in Star Citizen. So if you really want the feel of how do my guns work and how do I control the ship and what are the flight characteristics of the way this particular ship that I bought off the store or that I purchased in game is realized. And when I'm dogfighting in Star Citizen, it is much more realistic, and you can have hands-on stick and throttle, and you can have a much more realistic flight simulator time in Star Citizen than you will ever have in either of the other two games. Starfield sits somewhere in the middle. I like the space combat quite a bit. It's definitely better, more real feeling, meaty space combat than is in No Man's Sky. It's much less than what you're going to get in Star Citizen, though. Having shipbuilding be part of the game, and I think I've got a view of me building a ship here, playing with the shipbuilder a bit. Having shipbuilding in the game, that's a differentiator. You can't build a ship in either of the other two games. You can find interesting ships, but the ships are just a cockpit and an interesting looking procedurally generated ship in No Man's Sky, and you can discover new ones. You can buy ships in-game or in the cash shop in Star Citizen. Here, you get a starter ship first 5 minutes of the game. That's part of the story. They give you a constellation ship. You can capture other ships. You can buy other ships. And then, and what I'm doing here is I'm in the shipbuilder. I'm now in the shipbuilder ripping this ship apart. I'm taking all the pieces out. I'm shuffling them around a little bit because I wanted to reconfigure this ship. I didn't like how the loading dock where you walk into the ship, I didn't like how it was in the back. I want it to the front of the ship. This is really, really cool and really fun. So this is a much deeper part of the game that you don't get in either of those other games that I really like. So I like this, and I just started doing it. In fact, I couldn't finish what I wanted to do in this particular scene when I was ripping all of this stuff apart. I was able to repaint the whole ship and change the colors, but I wasn't able to finish because my skills weren't high enough. Still, It's an RPG. My skills weren't high enough because two of the big engines on this ship are Class B engines, and I'm only rated to do Class A modifications on a ship. Okay. All right.
So did you have to put it all back together again until you?
Well, you just escape. You basically say to cancel all of the changes, because as I'm making changes here, you'll see the total cost of changes will start to go up as you add parts to a ship or you change things around. If you're just moving parts around, it doesn't cost anything. If you're adding more parts on, it starts to cost credits. So they don't charge you until you confirm all of your changes then. You'll also see down in the lower right, it says, you got an error. And, this ship won't work this way. You can't finish building this ship.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad. Otherwise, you might build a monstrosity. Yeah.
As soon as you try to take off. One of the errors is your ship parts don't touch each other. They're just floating around. That's not going to work there, brother. So it's very, very cool that way. It's a very interesting part of the game. Base building is outpost building. As I said, outposts are, an individual outpost is slightly more advanced, and I'll go back to my outpost building here in No Man's Sky. Individual outposts, I say, are I think slightly more creative and advanced in No Man's Sky, but there's an extra thing that you can do in Starfield Outpost, which is kind of interesting, which is connect multiple outposts together with a freighter system where you put down a landing pad and you say, anything I put in this box, I want random shuttles to come in and grab the stuff out of this box and bring it to the other end of this link, this cargo link that I'm setting up. So you can have a network of outposts where one outpost is mining these three things and another outpost is mining these three minerals and elements. And then to get it all in one place so that you can build something out of it, you have the outlying outpost ship their stuff in. And when you set up that cargo link pad, I don't know if we'll sort of see it in this video, but as soon as you set up the cargo link pad and it starts filling up with materials, the NPC freighters that are delivering the stuff back and forth, you'll hear it. It's really loud. They'll come in and they'll fly in overhead. They'll land on those pads. They'll pick stuff up and they'll fly away. It's very cool to watch that happen. I really like that. So my plan, there's say 16 base elements that you could be mining out of the game. Gases, liquids, and minerals that you could be extracting out of the ground. My plan is to have, in fact, it's probably more than 60, maybe it's about 24 or 32 even, but my plan is to have enough outposts networked together at some point with all of these lines of transport so I can have every single mineral possible in the game that I could use to craft something. There's not really all that much to craft, but I would have it. I would have it. It's all going to be flowing into one place. I'm going to have this web of network of outposts. I like it. So that's a part of the game that you sort of can't do in No Man's Sky and doesn't exist in Star Citizen. There's no base building. They've talked about maybe adding base building to Star Citizen someday. It doesn't exist, and who knows, that might take them 10 years to implement that as a feature. Crafting exists in No Man's Sky, but not really. And it doesn't exist in Star Citizen at all. It exists in No Man's Sky. You basically craft by getting the right materials, which is why you might have an outpost to extract those materials out of the ground. But then within your inventory, you just say, craft this thing, craft a new module for my ship, which is a new gun. So there's not a ton of crafting there where you're like going to a station. In Starfield, you have skills associated with the different stations that you might set up, like a weapon station or a ship part station or a ship component station or a med station where you're crafting drugs to, like med kits and that kind of thing. So a little bit deeper, a little more interesting on the crafting side. Not a ton, but a little more interesting, I'd say, than either of the other two games in that way. So that's fun too. So okay, now I've been talking for a while and sort of getting the idea here of the compare and contrast and sort of where these things live, at least where they live in my mind. My point in doing all of is sort of like in going through this was to sort of hopefully, and you've maybe heard it in how I've been describing it, describe the fun that I have in each of these places. So I like to play Star Citizen. I like to play Star Citizen because I like the tech. I like the tech demo. I like what they've implemented. I love that simulation when I want the feel of the simulation. I like that what Star Citizen has done to create that simulation, and I like to go and visit it. So if you like that, if you like Star Citizen, and maybe we'll do a whole episode sort of deeper into Star Citizen with maybe somebody else who plays Star Citizen, with some tips and tricks on how to get into it. But if you like that, the sound of getting into a simulation with some of the most advanced tech in the game, do a free fly weekend or buy a starter package, one of the cheap ones, get in there and try it out.
I get the feeling with Star Citizen, you could play for quite a while with that starter pack, and then you could come to a decision about how much you want to invest in this game as a hobby.
There are ships in the store that you can't buy because they're locked out or they're too new or they were like a fear of missing out one-time purchase, which is not so hot on their part in the game. But with that starter ship, you could start in some of the basic game loops, like going and doing some basic mining, and you could build up enough in-game currency to buy most of the possible ships that are in the game too.
Well, and I was thinking more that
I
was thinking more that you would find out if you liked what the game had to offer.
Yes. So free fly weekend is a great way to do that. And the starter packages are a great way to do that too. But even the idea of, well, the starter packages is just a little dinky ship. I can't like put there's like a little crawler that you sit in to do slightly more advanced mining. There's sort of 3 stages of mining. There's hand mining with a hand laser. There's what's called a rock, which is almost like a little bobcat that you drive around on the planet's surface. That is the mid-tier mining. And then there's very advanced mining where you got a mining ship that's very expensive that flies around in space and mines asteroids. You can't even fit that rock on a starter ship, but you can buy the ship, like a mid-tier ship that you can fit the rock on relatively easy, maybe like in a couple weeks of in-game time for a moderate busy gamer type player. So you can even try and play and build up and quest towards more advanced ships. And that's my game loop in Star Citizen, is building up enough credits to buy the next ship, build up more credits to buy the next ship. So you can do a lot of that with Star Citizen too, which is kind of cool. The downside to Star Citizen is it is an alpha. So you do have to deal and put up with it being an alpha. There are a lot of bugs. And in this past year when I've played, it's been like too buggy for me to even play. I'll start playing and it's just crashing or nothing's working, and I'll just shut down the game and I'll wait a
And
month.
do they
till-
also have like protracted downtimes while they're doing things?
No, that's the problem. They just
Oh,
let it be broken for for forever. And if for like a month until they get the next release out, they just let it be there and let it be broken. So that
it is an
bothers
alpha.
me.
That's yeah. That
And
sounds
they'll
like an alpha.
use that excuse. They'll sort of overuse that excuse. Legally, if you try to get a refund, they will say, no, from a legal perspective, it's in enough of a released state where you've played the game and you've gotten your money's worth, and now you can't have your money back. From a game development perspective, they will say, oh, it's an alpha, so all of these bugs and, the reason all of your stuff is now gone today, and, wiped from the game is because it's an alpha, of course. I mean, of course, it's an alpha.
So if none of that bothers you, this might be a good game.
Right. And your stuff will get wiped as well.
Yeah. How
Multiple
about
times a year. Not the stuff you bought, that
I
always
was
then
gonna
shows
say,
up.
that would be rough.
The stuff you've bought comes back then, and you get that when you start up again. But your character that you've created gets wiped. All of your inventory, anything that you've built up, and new ships that you've bought in game, all of your credits, that gets wiped multiple times a year.
Mhm.
So major patches, it gets wiped because it's a major patch and they've made enough changes where they need to do a wipe. Minor patches might have enough bugs that your stuff gets wiped, and, well, it wasn't supposed to wipe it. I don't know. It's an alpha. That's happened to me multiple times. That's really frustrating. I'll go on the Discord and I'll say, was there some sort of wipe? All my stuff is gone. And there's like a moderator that does this all the time. No, there was no wipe. There is no wipe with 3.18 release. Okay, but 50% of the players have all of their stuff gone. I'm now reading. So I get that you're saying there was no wipe, but 50% of the players had all of their stuff wiped. I was just coming in to confirm that. Yes, but there was no wipe. Okay. All right, fine. There was no wipe, but I should expect that my stuff might all be gone. That was kind of, not to do a hot take there and call them out.
You're losing
That'll
your
happen.
kill.
So you got to be ready for that too. You got to be ready for the alphaness of it. And you got to be potentially also ready for this never to finish, for this to go for another 10 years and
I mean,
still
that is
only
a
get
possibility. Yeah.
50% further. Is it a scam? Will they never finish? That isn't their plan. They do plan to turn it into a game. Have they developed and implemented things in the last 10 years? Yeah, a lot of stuff. And it gets better and better all the time.
I don't think it's a scam, but I think people want to label it because they don't want to play under these conditions.
Right.
And they would rather say it's a scam than say, I don't want to play it.
Right. You have to sign up. You have to agree to play what you're signing up for, which is an alpha, an experimental version of the game. And can you get your $45 or $100 or $150 worth of fun out of it? Yes, I believe you truly can very easily get that value out of playing it, even in this alpha state. I did. I'm happy. And I'm probably going to spend more money later this year when there's a sale in November and upgrade my starter package to a slightly bigger package. I'll probably end up then put my total lifetime spend of Star Citizen up to probably about $120. And I've been playing it for years because I want this slightly bigger ship, and I've multiple times worked up to it in game, but I don't play it enough where I work up to it right away. And I want that. I want my Drake Cutlass Black when I come into the game new after a wipe. I'm gonna buy one of those eventually. But $150 for a game that I've been playing for like 5 years now, and getting a fair amount of good gameplay out of. It's less than I'm spending on World of Warcraft.
Well, I mean, you could easily spend that in a lot of different ways in the gaming universe.
Absolutely. I spent it in 9 and 10 months in World of Warcraft. So every year. I'm still subscribed there. All right. No Man's Sky. What's my fun in No Man's Sky? And No Man's Sky, you want to talk about cost. This is one of the fun parts of No Man's Sky. Buy it once, play it forever. I bought it 7 years ago. There is no way to give them more money. They have done 25 updates. They've done 11 expeditions. They're all free. Everything. They just add it into the game. They send it out. They've given themselves such goodwill in doing that and the flexibility to basically constantly over-deliver because they've promised nothing in a really interesting way that I think puts them in a unique position in the gaming marketplace, in the developer marketplace. This is Hello Games, the publisher. There's no roadmap. They don't explain what's going to be coming later in the year. They don't promise an expansion. They don't promise anything because you haven't bought anything. And no one has. You aren't signed up for anything but the game that you bought. And the game that I bought 7 years ago, I got my money out of the first month that I played it 7 years ago. I was a little disappointed when I got to the end because I sort of saw the edges of where it was so far. And then they added more. And then they added living ships, and you could encounter these ships that were alive and in the game. Then they added outposts and base building. Then they added this new kind of ship that I'm building as a story around these weird robots that sort of are the space cops of No Man's Sky that are keeping things straight. And you can get one of their ships. And they just added a whole new expansion with a new fourth race of these sort of half robot creatures that you can go and talk to, and you can mod yourself to look like one of them, and you can get one of their special staff weapons, and all free. So I love that from No Man's Sky, and I love the expeditions. So 11 expeditions. I've played every expedition all the way through at least twice. I'm wondering if I'll do Expedition 11 twice, but we'll see. I got another month and a half.
Too. Yeah.
It might be the first one that I don't do twice. I've done some of the expeditions 3 times, once on PC, once on Steam Deck, and once in VR. This is one of the best VR games. It's my number one VR game. I think this is one of the best VR games on the market. To play this just vanilla, play it in VR. Do you have to buy it for the VR platform? No. It's just what you get. It's on Switch. It's on I think it's PlayStation, Xbox, Switch now. It's on Steam. So that's what I love about No Man's Sky. And I think their expedition model is one of the best sort of battle pass type challenge modes, season systems of any game. It speaks to me in the way it provides the milestones, it leads you along, it gives you what you need, it gives you achievable objectives that are, for me, very fun to do in the context of the way this game works, which is exploration, lightweight survival, start from nothing, build yourself up, and go and explore this procedural universe that they've created.
It definitely has its own look, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is where you'll sort of see the boundaries. So you've seen like videos and you've seen the trailers and you've seen what I've seen. Yes, it's infinite variation, but it all tends to start looking the same, especially from an outside view perspective. So you could see those edges where you're not going to get to a place that you don't recognize. And that's good and bad too. Here I'm walking around on my freighter. They added freighters to the game. So this is sort of like a space base, and you can build it out on the inside however you want. You can add different rooms and change it around and add your crafting stations, your refiners, your crafting, again, sort of automatic, but your refiners and your storage inside the freighter, all free. They've added that in. It's tons and tons and tons of stuff that they can continue at. So that
Have
is
you
very
played, by the way, have you played Elite Dangerous at all?
Yes. I didn't want to add that in. We could have added that in as a third one, and it's very valid sort of in this genre to compare. Elite Dangerous falls a little bit between, I'd say. It's more on the Star Citizen side of things, a little bit more simulatory, not as actualized and realized and physical, the new tech that Star Citizen has built. So a little bit more gamey than Star Citizen. And Elite Dangerous is some of the updates and changes that they've made has made people less happy with the way it's working out. But it's definitely more on that sort of like simulation side of things. A little bit more arcadey, and it is a shipping game. So that is the plus side to Elite Dangerous. I really liked Elite Dangerous as a VR game. I would say that's my second favorite VR experience, even though I haven't played it in years at this point. their space game, their space combat and space flight in VR is some of the best out there. In theory, Star Citizen is going to add VR eventually as well. And in fact, I think you can. I just cannot imagine playing, because of the technical aspects, I cannot imagine playing Star Citizen in VR. But maybe it's going to work and maybe it's going to be really good. But Elite Dangerous, when I got on the ground with the ground vehicle, it made me dizzy. So
Where would you put Eve in all this?
oh, here we go. Have I played Eve? Yes, I have played Eve. Eve is another good example of a game that's, you could visually look at a trailer and think it's similar to these games. It is not. Eve is interesting. Eve is a space game, but it's a space game backed by spreadsheets, backed by the economics of what goes on, and it's a data-driven world. Is it fully rendered and realized, and do the ships look beautiful and all of that? Yes, very much so. But what you're doing in Eve is you're creating your organizations, you're creating your economic models, and that's very, very player-driven world. And all of the content in Eve is the player-driven sandbox. You're creating this economic model to go play in. Now, there are some physical things that you do in Eve as well. You go off and you do mining. Ship combat, I would say ship combat is not very physical in Eve. Ship combat, again, is like targeting things on a spreadsheet and based on the data, worrying about what your orbital velocity is compared to another ship that you're flying against. Is it rendered? You see what's going on? Yes, but that's not what anyone looks at when you play Eve. You're looking at data windows that you have open that's showing your range and your velocity and your vectors of where everyone's at, and the orbit that you're flying around, and your speed relative to their speed, to the type of guns that they have, because the tracking on their guns is X amount and your flight speed is Y amount. Your ship is this big, their ship is this big, and you've DPS down their shields and put you in this kind of position. Same thing with organizations, and ownership of space is huge in Eve. So ownership of space, again, it's data and driven by spreadsheets. But you have a big organization, or maybe you have organizations of organizations, and they all work together to own parts of space. And then you can attack other people's parts of space. So there's a ton of that in Eve. Eve's a whole nother basket of, it's got other baskets of deplorable parts to it that have made me quit Eve and stop playing Eve. It caters, by design, it caters to trolls. And it brings out some really bad behavior in people. So you have to be very careful and craft who you play with and how you play Eve, unless you're up for that. And if you're up for it, then, just be ready for people to be terrible and say terrible things to you in general chat, and be mean to you, as mean as they could be, and come up in, there's no safe spot in Eve. There's sort of like high sec areas where if someone attacks you, they'll be instantly killed by the police. But people make it their life's mission to create cheap ships, group up with their friends, go into that protected space, blow you up, accept their own death, and then clown on you because they killed some noob, and maybe their ships were less expensive than your ship, so they won, and they ruined your day, so they won. They love to farm tiers in Eve, and that's a whole part of the Eve game. But I played Eve for years, and there's value to it. I had fun, I found, in Eve as well. So someone asked me in the chat room before we started, and before we get to what else we've been playing in our last 15 minutes, someone asked me, kiss, marry, kill on these 3 games of what would I say between Starfield and No Man's Sky and Eve. No, Starfield, No Man's Sky, Star Citizen. And my point in doing this, and hopefully you got the feeling of it, is I would do all of that to all of them. They all have pros and cons. I love to play all 3 of them and will continue to play all 3 of them. Right now, I'm playing more Starfield than either of the others two, but I'm playing No Man's Sky every day right now just to go through the expedition, just a little
Well, right
bit here and
now,
there.
Starfield is having a moment, so why wouldn't you be playing Starfield?
Exactly. Long term, I think number of hours, I bet No Man's Sky and Star Citizen will end up having more lifetime hours because they are persistent worlds and multiplayer. And Starfield is not. If Starfield was MMO, that would probably then be, be something I would play for 10 years. So I'll play through Starfield. I'll play Starfield for a while. Maybe I'll play New Game Plus a little bit. Maybe when the mods come out next year and the big new mods drop, maybe I'll play it again. But then I'll be kind of, I imagine I'll be kind of done, because that's the way that kind of thing works. Will I come back to No Man's Sky over and over and over again for the next decade? I expect to, yes. Same thing with Star Citizen. So chat room's asking, New Game Plus spoilers? No, I'm avoiding spoilers quite a bit. And I'm kind of, and maybe it's wrong, and I know that, this is something that maybe I'll get to the end and realize I did it wrong, or the interweb might tell me I'm playing it wrong, but I'm playing it how I want. So am I spending 50% of my time is spending hours and hours on this stupid outpost stuff, which has no bearing on the game? Yeah. And I'm going to continue to do that. Am I going to go collect some more ships and mod them all around and change them up and however I want? Yeah, I'm going to do that. Do you have to do that for the game? No, not at all. Should I wait until I get to a New Game Plus playthrough? Maybe. I don't know, but I'm not going to ask or find out. I'm going to play it how I want. I will play through the story. I will see what New Game Plus means, and maybe I will play New Game Plus, or maybe I'll just continue my current save and not play New Game Plus. So we'll see. So that's that. That was fun. That was fun for me. That was fun for me to think about and think through and talk about a little bit. Hopefully you sort of got the feel of that. But that's not all we've been playing, is it, Seema?
No, not by a long shot.
So what else? So now you talk for a couple minutes. What have you been playing?
You need a drink of water at this point.
Yes.
Well,
I'm parched.
Like you, I've been playing Star Wars: The Old Republic, so the new Galactic season started, so we've been working on that. I've also been playing WoW, and what I play is Wrath Classic, because right now WoW has retail, WoW has Classic Era, WoW has Wrath Classic, and now WoW has WoW Classic Era Hardcore. So you can't just say WoW anymore.
Right, there's
But
4. There's 4 WoWs.
The game for me, which I realize I'm playing a little bit like a cozy, is Wrath, because my raid team is in between seasons, and so I'm just like leveling characters and crafting things and collecting things and doing what I feel like, that is fun for me. So I enjoy that a lot, way more than I should. I've also been playing some mobile games and some word games. I keep coming back to word games. My new one this week, I don't know if this really qualifies as a word game, but it's called Connections, and basically it's a very simple concept. They give you 16 things and you have to group them into 4 groups of 4. And so you have to sort of divine the way they're connected, and sometimes it's harder than other times.
Huh. What was that? What was the name again?
It's called Connections.
Connections.
And like sometimes it'll be obvious, like they'll be like oink, moo, blah blah blah, and it'll be like animal sounds. Other times it'll be like cucumber, creature, blah 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 blah, and it will turn out that those are all words that go with the word sea, like sea cucumber, sea creature, blah blah blah.
Oh, this is a New York Times deal, right? Which tend to be really good because
they're high quality, the New York Times games.
They're puzzle creators, and like Will Shortz is a genius. So
so like this one, you can see right away that Nope, Open, Peon, Pone, and Nepo are all anagrams of the same word.
Yep.
But that's 5. So which one is the least
which doesn't fit?
Makes the most,
So you have to create groups of 4. I see.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a trap, or maybe it's a trap. You'd think that those go together, but maybe they don't. Huh. clever. I
So
like
it's
it.
kind of the word games have kind of sort of taken over my coffee and contemplation time. I just wake up in the morning and do these. And then my whole family are into them too, so we like text each other, "I can't get this one. Give me a clue."
Yeah, these are good for that, and that's why you see even with Wordle, you sort of still see it being posted on social networks. It's yeah, on X. It can be a really social thing. These kind of games, which is really interesting. Let's go back to Star Wars for a second. What are you doing in Star Wars? Because we did do some stuff in Star Wars that we should probably touch on. Because the season started and now we have a new week. I did want to bring that up.
Right. And I was very good about getting all my rep tokens in last week.
Even after me like telling everyone, don't forget, I didn't finish it. I did like 3 out of my 5 tokens, so I only got like 3/5.
I mean, I admit
I got
I did do
distracted
it.
on Monday.
Yeah.
Creating a new spreadsheet. I created this
Like
really complex spreadsheet for Starfield.
we have a raid team called Where's the Cantina? And so I ran with them on Monday night because they needed a fill-in. And I realized as I was running from them, I forgot to finish out my rep tokens, and I forgot I had to run again the Secrets of the Enclave, which is a flashpoint, which is their word for dungeon. I needed one more run of it to make my goal for Galactic Seasons. And so like midnight, Monday night, I was out there running Secrets of the
Yeah.
Enclave by
Right.
myself. But so I did remember at the last minute. And I have done this before where I've gotten up at my, 7 o'clock in the morning, and then I'm like, oh my God, I have an hour to finish Galactic Seasons from last week. That's not good. Don't do that. I don't recommend it.
No. I did 7 to 7 objectives for the season last week, so there was
Yeah,
that.
I did. I managed it. But one of them was not the 4 operations. Oh, that's this week.
Right. So that's new this week. This season they added, and their intent was a little bit more group content and reward some of that groups that are playing together. And they said, okay, operations, that's a cool thing. Maybe we should add that into the season as an objective for the week. You don't have to do all the objectives. So they added it in. And I think the idea was, hey, this is cool. Let's add this in as an objective. And I think there was a disconnect and someone didn't get the message because they said, okay, well, here's 4 possible for the week because they want to constrain the number of possible operations because there's 20 of them in the game. So everybody's not trying to do different ones. Get the population to a smaller group. So here's 4. Here's 4 cool ones. And the objective turned out to be do all 4. Do all 4 for one and to get 1 X on your list versus like do 2 flashpoints to get 1 X on your list. So, 2 solo flashpoints or fly 2 heroic space missions and you get done. 4 full, raid group content objectives. I think what it should have been is here's 4, do 1, and you get the objective checked off for the week.
Certainly to make it commensurate with the amount of effort going into some of the others. But I do think also they could have said to themselves, I mean, assuming they do have data and they look at it, there's a certain population of people who run a bunch of operations every week. Let's throw them a bone.
Yeah, but even those people, 4? I think 4 is still.
I don't know. I know that when I ran with Where's the Cantina, they typically run 2 ops every time they meet. And if you're on 2 ops teams that do that.
But that's still two nights of
It's
group
a lot of
content.
time. Yes, it's a lot of time. I started my comment by saying that.
Yeah. Well, I added them. I also got out some parchment and an inkwell, and I penned a histrionic note to them on how this should be potentially changed. And Jackie replied to my comment on Twitter and said, we're thinking about it. We'll take the feedback into consideration. Not necessarily that they're going to change it, and they might have a good reason why they still would like to keep it, do all 4. But I bet they're going to change it.
Yeah. In the past, with respect to Conquest, they have always said, we want the amount of time it takes you to do this to sort of have a balance across all the things. Like they removed all the things that you could do in, a couple of seconds and tried to make things sort of equal for the points that you make. And they probably have that goal for Galactic Seasons as well.
Yeah. So that was fun. We're going to continue to do that. I'm finding my time in Star Wars is very focused right now on Galactic Season. I will do PvP when it comes up in the Galactic Season objectives, but I'm kind of done with the PvP season
Because you got
because,
as far as you wanted to.
yeah, I did. I got up to 17. And so I'm probably going to get even further, which means I will get a couple pieces of the advanced version of the new armor set for this season. I do not plan on going to 25. I won't go to 25. It's just not enough time to do the Galactic Season and the PvP season and all of the other stuff.
Especially if you have to do 4 operations.
Right. I'm not going to finish that one this week. So I will finish the other 12-point objectives, but not this one. So that's been a bunch of fun Star Wars stuff. Oh, we got people rating in the chat room there. Hello. So yeah, that's Star Wars time. Wow, I created my hardcore character. I haven't been back. So did you do anything else on your hardcore character?
Oh no.
Right.
I considered because we have actually 2 guilds in hardcore. And one is the guild that we're setting up on Mancrit Classic era, so that if you die, when you die in hardcore, you have a place to send your body. So we have the guild that has the living players and the guild that's like the graveyard for the ones that have died.
Yes. And we have a channel in our guild Discord server now called Hardcore Graveyard, where you can permanently memorialize your characters from WoW Classic Hardcore after they are no longer there.
I mean, just in case someone doesn't know, hardcore means when you die, your character's done. No more.
Yes.
No rezzing, no nothing.
I think we talked about it 2 shows ago or 3 shows ago when Lars came on.
I'm hoping that someone's listening that's new.
Yeah. Well, refer them. Go like and subscribe. Get this. Go back to episode 478 or 479. I think that might be it. So yeah. That's very cool. So bunch of stuff this week. Long discussion on Starfield versus Star Citizen versus No Man's Sky. Hopefully people had some fun with that. I would love to hear. I loved the chat room chiming in about Eve and Elite Dangerous. Jump in either in the comments or the Discord and tell me your thoughts. Kiss, marry, kill on all 3 of those, and then all of these other that are in the genre. I like them all. I play them all, and I think that's really fun. And we can just surprise, we can all like multiple things. One doesn't have to lose. It's not a zero-sum game. So that's a really fun part of it as well. All right, I think that's it for today. Back to playing all of these games for us. I think I need to do a bunch of SWTOR Galactic Seasons tonight before I get back to Starfield. All of the feed and subscribe links are on newoverlords.com. And the video, of course, is on YouTube/newoverlords. You can also come chat with us in our Discord at newoverlords.com/Discord. While Discord is the best to come track us down, and we're in there all the time, all day, every day. You can also follow me on Twitter, Mastodon, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, and Facebook. Mostly just look for Max the Gray, maybe New Overlords, and you'll find me in all of those places as well. And then you'll be kept up to date either in the Discord or those places when we go live and do things like the live recording of the show. And with that, we will talk to you soon.
Later, everyone. Take care of yourselves.